Alright guys, welcome back to another one. In today's video, we got something pretty crazy to talk about, something that I certainly wasn't expecting to see in the headlines come after the release of Visions of Mana, but recently a news story broke out that the developer of Visions of Mana, as we know, only just released Ouka Studios is actually getting shut down. For people that are unfamiliar with Ouka Studios, it is a separate studio outside of Square Enix. Square Enix actually outsourced the development of Visions of Mana to NetEase. You guys should all be familiar with NetEase, an incredibly popular Chinese-based publisher, which started a Japanese-based development studio back in 2020, investing in Japanese games development. As over the past few years, Japanese video games have become increasingly popular in China. Since the birth of the studio, they've only been working on Visions of Mana, a team comprised of people in Japan as well as over in China, and developers from Square Enix. This was reported by Bloomberg, who heard from an anonymous source that both Tencent and NetEase are apparently reconsidering and scaling back many of their investments in Japanese studios, due to these studios unfortunately not hitting expected targets, and that the Chinese game market over the past couple of years has started to hit a rise. Games like Genshin Impact or the recent Black Myth Wukong prove that there are some talented video game developers over in China, so for the likes of both Tencent and NetEase, it would financially be wiser to start shifting those investments they have overseas where they're not performing to hit targets, to start just investing locally. And especially with what PlayStation are doing with the China Hero project, with a lot of promising games in development currently right now that are all Chinese based, it does seem as if the Asian game market, looking at both China and Korea, are starting to boom. In a very unfortunate way, this might seem like a stroke of PTSD, like this situation feels oddly familiar. Square Enix releasing a game and then not too long after, the studio closes down. Oh, that's right. Luminous Productions. So we should all be pretty familiar with the Forspoken situation, a big AAA title that was meant to push the PlayStation 5 to its limits and be a pretty big release for Square Enix in 2023. This game was released on the 24th of January, and it wasn't met to very good reception, even though for me personally, I enjoyed the game, and I certainly do not believe that it deserved the amount of hate it received. It was announced not too long after that Luminous Productions would in fact be closing down, being officially shut down on the 1st of May, only a few months after the release of the game. We already know that for the past fiscal year for Square Enix, things haven't been the greatest. Not that they're in dire straits or anything like that, but there have been quite a number of projects that unfortunately just haven't been able to meet target, with more money going into development than money seen returned. And Forspoken is a prime example of this exact thing. Square Enix at the beginning of this year announced a pretty big shift in the way that their business structure is working and how they approach video game development, in the hopes that a lot of the losses that the company has seen over the past few years can hopefully be turned around. However, this recent Visions of Mana situation isn't Square Enix sided, it is NetEase sided. This is one of the issues when it comes to outsourcing video games. The company that's outsourcing the work to the contracted developer doesn't exactly have operational control. This is 100% NetEase's decision. Of course, this still means that they get the game that they were contracted to do out. Visions of Mana is out, and it's a fantastic time. But yeah, it was reported that NetEase has cut all but a handful of jobs at the Ouka Studio. They apparently intend to shut down the studio, and only a few people remain there looking to oversee the release of Visions of Mana. It should be known though that this hasn't been officially announced by NetEase. This is a report that Bloomberg have received. However though, it's important to know that Bloomberg are pretty reputable most of the time. They are a pretty serious outlet. And so, if Bloomberg are talking about this and they've heard from a source that this is in fact happening, yes, I definitely believe it. It's pretty insane to think that this game literally only just come out, and the fact that Ouka Studio was birthed with its first project being that of Visions of Mana. The game comes out, then a couple of days later, a report comes out that NetEase are pulling the plug on the studio, a decision that was made before the development of Visions of Mana had wrapped up. It's pretty insane considering that they haven't taken the time to see if Visions would be successful or not. Clearly, NetEase decided that their investment into Ouka Studios would be better placed elsewhere. It's really unfortunate. I also feel for those people that worked hard on Visions as a part of turning Ouka Studio into something special, with their first game being absolutely incredible. Now, this doesn't mean this is the end of the Mana series. I think that Visions of Mana is going to breathe a lot of life back into the Mana franchise, with a lot of people using this game as their first step into the Mana series. I know for myself personally, this was my first Mana game, and I simply loved it. I think that the positive reception that is currently going around for this game will definitely encourage Square Enix to see future releases for this series, just of course developed in-house rather than being outsourced. Because if we look at the general reception of Visions of Mana, it has been really well received, and this is totally well deserved. I mentioned in my review that I think this is one of the best action RPGs of 2024 that I've played so far. And I'll use this video right here as a chance to say this again. If you are looking for a really decent action RPG, then look no further than Visions of Mana. It's a great time. I'm hoping that the employees of Ouka Studio, who are not Square Enix sided, do continue to find work within NetEase. I am sure that they will be absorbed back into NetEase, into another subsidiary somewhere else. That is the best case scenario. Layoffs within the video game industry has been at an all-time high since the pandemic hit. And it's really insane to think that you wake up to news like this and you think to yourself, oh, it's another one. Another studio closing down, another group of people losing their job. It's sad because this is happening way too often in the industry. The general cost of video game development, especially looking in the AAA space, is just getting to an astronomically high point where I think a lot of developers are trying their best to cut corners as much as possible to make the overall process of developing a video game to such quality much cheaper. However, I don't think we'll see any additional content like a DLC for Visions of Mana with this happening. At this point, it's just kind of waiting for the official announcement from NetEase themselves. What is pretty unfortunate about this though is this Mana game was great, and so I do hope that for when Square Enix do decide to make the next one, I do hope that they can make it to the same level of quality that Visions has. However guys, just keeping you in the loop with the Square Enix happenings, thank you so much for tuning into today. Be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Hit that subscribe button to keep up with everything going on here, and check out my other garbage social media platforms. While you're at it, check out the shop. We got some cool stuff here and there. A big thank you to my wonderful patrons. I appreciate the support. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and we'll talk real soon.